Stefan, episode number 27.
You look like you're literally falling asleep at the moment. Seriously.
That's true, because it's 27 episodes.
27.
That means almost 1.5 years.
Holy shit, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know why I'm doing this, but I'm doing this for the love of Clojure. So that's the thing that matters. Anyway, welcome to the show.
Sincerity is so important, isn't it, to you? Sincerity is so important to you.
Yes, indeed. So this is episode number 27, and last episode we had David Nolan, and we thought we were gonna bump it up a notch and then get even more awesome guest than David Nolan.
Yeah,
so
we've done it. I think we've done it.
Yeah, and I think so. So we basically thought, okay, you know what? What is going to be better thing than completely traveling across the globe and then going to I don't know, people who live upside down, and then get to them and then see what's happening down there. So. We have on the show today Daniel Compton, all the way from New Zealand. Well, all the way. I mean, he's technically there, but
he's still there.
Welcome to the show, Daniel.
Thank you.
Yeah. Does gravity work? Just to talk about upside down people, are you still stuck to Earth?
Yeah,
Daniel? Because it looks like
tethers.
the background looks like you're floating in a heavenly orb of some type, like in a spaceship or something like that.
Yeah, this is my new office. I built it. Well, I didn't build it. Builders built it, and I did some of the painting and stuff a couple of months ago. After we had our second baby, and it was, I knew there was going to be a little bit too much noise going on in the house, so I got the builders to
make more noise.
Yeah, they made some more noise for a while.
What you're saying is going to be on the internet forever.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah.
They're going to listen to this thing.
They really
eventually.
Aren't. Yeah. Yes. But it looks like you're in one of those rooms of Johnny Ive, in the Apple adverts, where he's very deep about the edges of the chamfers. Did you do the chamfers, Daniel? Did you make sure the chamfers were all 100% milled with fine diamond cut edges?
I did the plastering and painting myself, and I thought I did a good job until afterwards, and then in certain angles it's not so great. So it's probably not Johnny Ive approved.
All right, okay. But it looks pretty impressive. It's all white. You look very godly. Yeah, you look like you're floating in a like a video from some fancy place.
Yeah, maybe that's what New Zealand is, probably fancy place. I've never been there. Okay, I think the first question that we would like to know is that whether the toilet flushes in the other direction or not. Yeah. That's the biggest question, right? Is it true?
I've never checked. Well,
I guess you don't know though, because it just flushes in the way that you have always had it flushing.
Yeah.
This seems to be like spectacular way to open a Clojure podcast.
I think so.
Talking about water in the toilet. But Ray, what do you have in the background? Is it Little Schemer, the orange book?
Yeah, actually I do. Yeah, that was that. I don't know if you
blurry,
bought that for me or if that was. So I think a friend bought it for me actually. A friend bought it for me.
It could be me because
birthday.
I lost that book a long time ago. So maybe it's like you stole it from me. Anyway,
I've never been to your house,
I'll
so
figure it
it's
out.
not possible, I think. Yeah, you've been to my house, but I haven't had an invite to yours actually. But then I can.
So I strategically placed it.
Okay.
In your home.
Well, maybe we can get an invite from Daniel to his house. So I think because we were talking before about like what is New Zealand famous for now, and if Peter Thiel and his billionaire class who want to escape the impending apocalypse that Donald is bringing, and that they're bringing, in fact, Peter Thiel and his buddies. They're coming with the blood of young children to the hideouts in New Zealand. And so you're seeing a lot of that, Daniel?
No, I'm not seeing too much of that up in the North Island. I think the South Island is really where they collect them. That's
mostly the South Island.
Creative naming. There's the North Island and the South Island.
But it's really not that creative if they are in the north and the south. It's better if they're west and east. Then it's confusing everybody. What if you're born in the east of the North Island? What do you call yourself then?
You're just a North Islander.
You're just a North Islander. There's no subcategories. Yeah.
No, it's not big enough.
Okay.
That's what I was thinking. I was thinking this might be incredibly offensive, but New Zealand has north and south. I mean, that looks tiny on the map. It's like Holland. I mean, how can it have north and south? Like that. They sound too far. How big is this anyway?
It's about 2,000 kilometers, I think, from tip to bottom.
Wow.
And what's the rivalry story then between the north and the south? Because I wasn't aware that there was. I know that there's a little split there, but it's joined, isn't it? There is.
Maybe
it's not fully island, is it?
And no, they're two islands. But probably.
What's the join then between the two? Just a quick geography lesson at the beginning of this Clojure podcast.
Sure.
Bring us up to speed with New Zealand's geography. Come on.
Welcome to New Zealand Geography podcast.
Yeah. So the sort of indigenous creation myth is that Maui pulled the islands up out of the sea, North Island and South Island, with his jawbone hook, and that's how we got here today. And so there's a channel between the North and South Island, like a water channel. You have to take a ferry or a plane across to the other ones. And so there's not so much North versus South Island, but it's more of a everybody to the north of me is worse than I am sort of mentality. So so Auckland is the sort of major city, metropolitan city, and I'm not sure how. This is just a generalization, but everyone south of Auckland says, those Aucklanders, they're soft and they drink their lattes, and then as you kind of go further down, all of the people in the South Island say, all of those North Islanders, they're soft, they drink their lattes, and then it kind of goes down and down and down as it gets colder and colder and more miserable.
Right.
And
So most of the zombie avoiders are in the South Island.
That's
then.
right. Yeah,
Is
there's
that
lots of wide open spaces, and you can see for long distances.
You can see the zombies coming.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah. So, right. Well, we had a little. Me and you had a little bit of fun on the internet recently, didn't we?
I wouldn't say that.
It was not fun for him, apparently. So,
no, actually, I was. Something. We're going to talk about one of your big projects, the reframe stuff, and all the D8 stuff as well. And actually, to be honest, I don't want to troll you about this shit, because I was super proud that I made one tiny adjustment to your documentation, and you accepted it. So, thank you very much. It's my very small claim to fame. So I appreciate that. So I'm bowing down to you, Daniel. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
All right. So Daniel, tell us a bit about yourself then. New Zealand, is Clojure big there? What's the story?
So Clojure's not that big in New Zealand, although we do have Colin Fleming, who's these
big hitters.
Big hitters, but not too many of them. Maybe that's the way to put it. So there are a couple of there's couple of Clojure companies up in Auckland, one in Wellington. There's Colin Fleming in Nelson. That's about all that I know of. There might be a few others hiding around places, but certainly not not that many compared to say San Francisco Bay Area. It's probably a much higher percentage of people using Clojure.
Yeah, but that's like mental, isn't it? That's so many people there. But you a bit like most Clojure programmers by the sound of things. You're living in the middle of nowhere, remote working.
Yeah. So I was living in Auckland for a few years, and then I've been contracting for Day 8 for a couple of years, and we realised, why are we living in the most expensive city in New Zealand when I'm working remotely? Day 8's an Australian company, and everyone works remotely, so we thought, well, why don't we move somewhere a little bit cheaper? So we moved back to our hometown in Morrinsville in the Waikato, and that's where I live. So
nice. So what's the story then, Daniel? How did you get to the Lisps, to the parentheses?
So I studied rock music at university, and
Obviously, yeah.
yeah, clearly that's
Yeah.
straight.
I mean,
straight.
you know,
Yes.
as you do.
So for the people who are
What the hell
listening
is
right
that
now,
kind of-
no, we need to tell them, right? For the people who are listening, now, Daniel is sitting in a place with I don't know, big rock albums and 17 guitars in the background and huge
Yeah.
speakers and everything, and with Metallica tattoos. I don't know, is Metallica rock? I have no clue.
It is, yeah.
But yeah, okay, who cares? Okay.
You're lucky there, yeah.
Something like that, and then huge posters of all that stuff. Rock bands. Help me out here. What are the rock bands? Say something. AC/DC?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yes, yeah.
Led Zeppelin.
Yeah, so he's sitting in that kind of room actually.
So you saw
Yes.
Rich Hickey's hair and you just thought, I've got to do that. Yeah, is that what it was?
It was close to that. It actually wasn't too. No, it wasn't too far from that.
That was a lucky hit then.
So yeah, I studied music, and I did a little bit of maths. And in my last year of university, I did a programming paper just kind of for interest. I'd always sort of been interested in programming and a little bit of Apple scripting stuff, but not kind of heavy duty programming. But I took that paper and really enjoyed it. And then after university, I'm not sure if you know this, but the job market for music graduates is not incredible. There's not a great shortage of rock musicians out there. So I was fortunate enough to get a job doing sort of data entry, computer admin stuff out of university, and then taught myself more and more as I was at the job, and then taught myself from the consultants that this company had in doing programming for them. And then when we moved up to Auckland, I went to work for those consultants, and so that was in a incredibly niche Microsoft warehousing financial package that you've never heard of or seen, and you'll hopefully never have to see it yourself. They just got syntax highlighting a couple of years ago.
Okay, moving with the times. Awesome.
Yeah, so that's kind of the world that was in, and so I could see that long term this wasn't going to be something that I really wanted to be in for a long period of time. And I'd been watching Rich Hickey videos while I was at this kind of time in my life, and I think that the Datomic ones were really what kind of got me into Clojure, because I was working with a mutable database all day. Everything was in the database, even the code was in the database, which is about as bad as it sounds.
Oracle, basically.
Yeah, pretty much.
And so
that's the Oracle architecture, isn't it? Stored procedures in the database. Boom, you're done.
Yeah. So I watched this and thought, man, this would make my life so much easier if I had an immutable database that we could kind of look back. What was the system state last week?
Yeah.
And so more I looked into it, I thought, well, this guy's also written a language. He must be. If I like his database design so much, maybe I should check out his language. And then sort of went from there, working on it more and more. And then I started consulting. And so I've been working with Clojure for the last 3.5, 4 years, somewhere around that time.
Cool.
You're probably one of the few
first
people
time
who's backed into... Yeah, sorry.
Yeah,
DJ,
exactly. Yeah,
Backed into
that's
it by
what I was
Datomic.
about to say.
Yeah, I mean, it's a compelling story. If you're...
Yeah.
Are you actually going to tell me now that you don't use Datomic at all?
Well, we just recently started. We just recently started a project at Day 8, which has been using Datomic. So that was a few months ago. So yeah, I kind of got into Clojure and thought, and sort of there was more than enough to learn in Clojure. But yeah, so I've been using Datomic a bit this year.
So you're like, come for Datomic and stay for Clojure.
Yeah.
You're the other way around. Very nice.
You finally got your thing. So that's really good. Yeah.
Yeah.
So tell us about the projects that you were working on. I mean, there is a lot of open source work that you put out there already. Obviously Reframe and Qubit and lots of other libraries. So
yeah.
Can we start talking about Reframe, because I've also had a little chat with Mike, and hopefully we can get him to join us next year as well to give a bit more of a bigger story. But can you give us a little bit about like what what's got you going with Reframe, Daniel? Because I know you're one
Yeah.
of the, you're one of the very active people there.
Sure. Yeah. So Mike Thompson, my boss, is kind of the creator and visionary of Reframe, if you like. He's the one who does all of the he does the implementation too, but he also does the big thinking. Conceptual. Where do we want Reframe to be going in the future? And I do some maintenance and some more feature level stuff. And I got into Reframe because I started working for Day 8, and this is what they created about three and a half years ago, maybe 4. It's been around for quite a while now.
Yeah.
And they created it because they were coming from a Flash based world, and so they had kind of really rich Flash apps that they were building, lots and lots of client side interactions, not just sort of straight forms, but lots of tables and multi-dimensional visualizations and all sorts of pretty rich complex things. And so they sort of took a look around, and Mike had been looking at the Elm architecture and stuff from all over the front end landscape, and sort of came up with Reframe as the design that made sense to him.
Okay. But does he come up with all this stuff from in the README? I mean, by himself, or
Yes.
Does he have like a professional writer or something? I mean, he just writes this like a novel, and
Yeah, he's
the Dan Brown of READMEs.
That's one of the things that Reframe is possibly most well known for, is its extensive documentation and very long documentation. At one point, it was all in one big, very long README, and there's kind of no secret there. It's just hours and hours of work. I would say Mike's probably put in 10 times, maybe 20, 30, 40 times the amount of time writing the documentation as he has in programming Reframe. So that's and I think that really shows.
Fascinating. Okay, so if I understand correctly, so Mike is doing the big picture stuff, and then you're maintaining these things, basically dealing with people like Ray, opening a stupid pull request and shit, and telling them to fuck off and stop bothering me now.
Yeah, I mean, Mike does the maintenance too. I just don't want to kind of claim credit for the.
He's just the annoying
one
one.
of the larger things.
Yeah,
Mike's really cool, but Daniel, no man. Yeah.
but where is Reframe going? I mean, so is this used? Is this extracted from production code, or is it something that you first worked on and then used in projects?
It's definitely in production, and we've got probably 5 or more pretty large applications using Reframe. So tens of thousands of lines of code. We've probably got well over 100,000 lines of code by now using Reframe. And lots of other people do too. So I guess we don't have any major breaking changes that we're planning on making to it.
Okay.
It's now pretty settled. There's different features improvements. Probably the one that people are most interested in is possibly, or one of the features people are interested in is making Reframe more, taking out the global state from Reframe. And that's, so for those people who don't know, Reframe has one global atom, and all of your handlers, subscriptions and event handlers are registered into the global context, and that's really nice for getting up and running. And there's lots of benefits that come from that, but it can make it a little bit challenging if you want to have more than one Reframe application on in the browser context at the same time. So there's kind of different ways we've looked at that, and I guess what we're really wanting to avoid is throwing the baby out with the bathwater. That if we make something that's more removing this global state or making it, packaging it up. What does the developer experience look like? Because that's kind of the most important thing is how do people use it.
But isn't the global state one of the key points of this architecture? Having one place where the entire UI state, everything being stored.
Yeah, so there's kind of two parts to global state. So there's one appdb which is global, but that doesn't necessarily need to be diffed into the reframe.db namespace. That could be that atom could be passed around throughout the whole app. So it's still one atom or ratom actually, reagent atom, but it's not kind of the state doesn't interfere with other reframe apps on the same page.
Okay.
So that's.
But I think also it isn't with the fact that you've got global state. There's one that's one part of it, but if you wanted to have, you can put events and you in theory you could have multiple places to store your data. I mean, you don't do it yet, but in theory, all this like the FX style handlers.
Yes.
In theory, could take another database or supply another database.
That's right. Yes, you could. And some people.
Maybe I'm getting into the weeds here, but maybe we should lift it up a little bit.
Yeah. So that's Reframe, and it's getting more and more popular. We see a couple of job postings every month or so that mention Reframe in the description. So I think it's sort of been just a slow build over time as people discover it and use it and like it and get running with it. So that's really satisfying. And when you get pull requests from people like Ray, I'm being genuine. I'm being genuine here. It really does make it better, and it's a really good feeling when you get pull requests from people contributing.
A quick question for you then actually is because we're talking about, we'll come on to your depths thing in a minute, but one of the things that I noticed with Reframe is that, and the thing I like about Reframe is that they have a bunch of components. D8 have this recom components, and you have this flow and X, and we won't get into each of those components. But what I'm interested in is like the management of those components. Any thoughts around that? At the moment, it's like fairly free for all. I think. I mean, D8 have some, but you can find some on GitHub. But what's the thinking around that a bit longer term?
Yeah, I think we have sort of a list of these are components that or libraries for Reframe that you might want to use. I think we're probably not going to set up a registry. People have to publish to it, but I could certainly see there being a little bit more structure around that, or just making it a bit easier for people to discover what's out there. But nothing at the moment.
Fair enough. Okay. Yeah. Good. Moving on then to depth. Well, we'll come on to depths. Why not?
Yeah. Actually,
Smooth
maybe we'll
transition there. Pretty professional.
Yeah, we might actually start at Clojures, because that's kind of the start of depths is actually Clojures. Yeah. So Clojures is probably just about everybody listening to this podcast knows, is the Clojure community jar hosting service. And so I've been an admin and maintainer there for, I think, coming up 2 years now. So we've moved Clojures away from Linode onto Rackspace, thanks to their Rackspace sponsors Clojures. We've also moved Clojures onto a CDN, thanks to Fastly, who sponsor all of the bandwidth for that. And so those two things have really kind of upped Clojure's reliability quite a lot, because we're no longer depending on the service, our Clojure service staying up. We can depend on Rackspace's object storage and Fastly's CDN to stay up.
Could you give a little bit of just for people who are maybe not so familiar with it, what's the reasoning behind why Clojure exists rather than just using Maven? Because obviously many things are in Maven and it's been there for a long time. We can access Maven. So what's the point?
Yeah, I think so. It was, Clojure's been around, long before I came to Clojure. So I'm not kind of aware of all of the thorny backstory, but Clojure's is, I think one of the goals of Clojure's has been it's to be easy to publish to for the Clojure community. And so Maven Central, there's various requirements of what you need to do to get a jar into Maven Central, and Clojure's, for better or worse, has a lot less stringent requirements. Really, if you can publish it, that's kind of about as much as you need to get on there, as long as no one's taken that name. So Clojure's is designed primarily for the Clojure community, and it's an open source project. There is at least one project I'm aware of that has forked Clojure's and uses the base of that for, I think it's the cascading community. So they publish their jars to a forked version of Clojure's that they use, and so Clojure's is kind of it's just a big data Java library.
Sorry, yeah. I thought you meant it was some sort of competitor. Yeah.
No. That's Clojure's. It's for the Clojure community to read and write from.
So it makes it easy to publish. You don't have to do all these pom.xmls and all this other crap.
Yeah, and you don't need approval, and there's no promotions, and there's less restrictions on signing and the names, the names that you choose, and that kind of has. I'm not sure if what the long term effects of it is, but in Maven Central you need to be able to kind of own the group ID, by owning the domain name, or have some sort of there's restrictions. You can't just publish to whatever you like, whereas in Clojure's you can just pick whatever name you like. It doesn't have to be a reverse domain name, and you can publish to it, and that's certainly easy. I kind of wonder, in the long term, is it going to end up polluting the namespace, or what happens? What happens with that long term? I'm not sure, but certainly that's the way it is, and it's not likely to change.
Yeah.
So left pad might be unpublished at some future point. Yeah, is that right? Yeah.
Yes.
So just a quick question on that. I mean, it's a bit of a sort of left field question, but what the hell? This is everything is uncharted here. So remember that there was a big Rich Hickey we're talking about him earlier on, making these big talks, and the one before last was all about versioning and packaging and dependencies, and basically the semantic versioning is fucked. I think he was more polite than that, but that was the bottom line. So clearly things like Clojure uses not necessarily semantic versioning, but package versioning and stuff like that. Yeah. There's two questions really. Number one is, what did you think about that talk? Did it resonate with you in terms of how Clojure runs?
Yeah, absolutely. So Clojure, one of the things he talks about in that is how Maven Central is immutable, and that's something that Clojure's has always been largely immutable. And there's been cases where people have wanted things deleted, and I think in part because of that talk, we've kind of been a little bit more serious about not letting people delete things. Nothing was ever. It was never like delete. I want to delete left pad, and we just say, okay, sure. But it was the I accidentally published this thing, or this thing that I published 2 months ago, and it's actually not. No one's using it. I didn't mean to. We would leave that there now. So the immutability of the repository is crucial to Clojure's, and I think the semantic versioning not being a great way to communicate change is makes a lot of sense. I think probably the one thing that I haven't really seen people push back on or talk about is the costs of this approach, because it's certainly it's valuable to people to not have their software break. But there's different kinds of software development or different audiences that you're developing for. And so if you're a solo developer developing your own internal libraries for your own projects, then the breakage in that it's maybe not great, but you're the one who broke it. You can also fix it. It's probably not a big deal. And similarly, even in a moderately sized company, the person who's making these breaking changes has the ability to fix them. And oftentimes, I would argue that's probably a lower effort than maybe lower effort than doing the backwards compatible non-breaking changes. Once you start getting out into libraries that are consumed by the world, then I think this approach really starts to make a lot of sense, and the benefits are much larger there.
So my follow-up question, and again, this is very just off the top of my head, is there was all this stuff in Clojure 1.9, and that Stuart Holloway's talked about as well with spec, is that in theory you could publish tests and all these other things. There's a potential way of communicating the validity of the components and their test. Is this something? I mean, I know that it's early days, so you won't have anything yet. But have you thought about that as a sort of something that could be interesting for Clojure?
Can you explain that a little bit further? Publishing the tests.
Yeah, so I think his idea, just again, I don't know how much he's thought about it, but I think it is that if you can have say that, okay, I've tested these things and I can publish some sort of hash sum or checksum to say that these tests and this spec have been ran against this code base, then that's to some extent will save you when you're running the code to say, right, okay, well, just like the Git checksums, I only need to do the tests against the code which is different or not affecting the code that these tests cover.
Yeah.
Is that a better explanation?
Yeah, no, I get what you're talking about. Yeah, that's definitely an interesting idea. I don't think it's not something I've gone past the thinking about stage. The other thing with spec and Clojure that I'm sort of interested in, and again haven't gone past thinking about, is sort of automatically enforcing semantic versioning or some form of communicating breaking changes where you can sort of from version to version you can say, here's the spec, here's what the spec was for this function last time, here's what the spec is this time. Does the spec grow or does it break? And if the spec breaks, then that's a new major version. If it's just growing, then it can be a minor version. I think that idea is really interesting, and I think Elm and other languages with more sort of type level information are able to enforce that. And I think something like that could be really interesting for Clojure.
All right, cool. Yeah, we'll see how it develops in the next release. Obviously, hopefully, Santa Clojure will bring us 1.9 for Christmas, and we can all have a happy New Year. Yeah. Okay.
But before we move into the other topic, I was just wondering, can you give us some idea about the Clojure stack? I mean, what kind of stack that you use to build Clojure and run it? Sure.
So Clojure is a pretty standard Clojure web app. It's built on Ring, Composure. We've got a SQLite database. Those are kind of
SQLite.
Yeah, wow. SQLite. SQLite can go quite a long way. And it's not so great for concurrent writing, but certainly for reading.
Exactly. Yeah.
But for reading, it's fine, and we don't have a ton of concurrent writes to Clojure, so it works really well, and it means that we don't have to maintain a Postgres database somewhere. So it served us pretty well. We've kind of thought.
So your database is just for the metadata, I guess.
Yeah, metadata, user profiles, all of that stuff. We don't serve any files or anything out of the database. So the repository path is kind of completely separate.
Okay, so I think the next logical one to talk about is depths, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So-
So Deps is a private Maven repository service that I've been
Mhm.
building, and it's now in beta access, so people can sign up and start using it. And so I started Deps because I had used the S3 private wagon and actually maintain it now as well, and I found there was some limitations with it. You couldn't sort of see a lot about when stuff was happening or restrict redeploys, and there's not a lot of management. It's really just treating S3 as a Maven repository, but there's not a lot of smarts behind it. And so
Yeah.
we also looked at things like Artifactory and Nexus, and those are really really powerful and capable tools, but they're also fairly complex and expensive to set up. And so I thought, I think there's probably a middle ground here for something that for smaller teams, people who don't need the super enterprise features of Artifactory or Nexus, but also need something a little bit stronger than the S3 wagon. That's kind of where Deps is aimed at.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And do you use the same kind of architecture, or do you use? I noticed that you have a Rethink DB client. So do you go a bit more exotic with the with the depth stuff?
No. So Deps is using Yada, the
Right.
Yada Aleph manifold kind of that sort of stack, and that was I really like that. I think do you guys know Yada? Have you used it?
Yeah,
or seen
yeah,
it?
yeah. I use
Yeah,
it
yeah.
myself actually. Malcolm
Yeah.
has been on the show. Come on,
the
you
show,
know, we know
yeah.
Malcolm.
Yeah. No.
He's an awesome
So-
bloke. Yeah.
Yeah.
Shout
and-
out to Malcolm. Yeah.
Yeah, so I really like Yada, and again, I think the docs for Yada are really good. They were kind of part of what sold me on it, and I really like the philosophy of Yada. So yeah, and then Postgres on the back end. So nothing too
Right.
exotic.
Right.
So this is right now in private beta,
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
so- and this is something like a software as a service, right? People get an account and then they can use it as a repository, private repository.
That's right. Yes. So the other thing that we didn't want to do, and other people also don't want to do, is run their own servers. And so
Right.
Yeah.
with Artifactory and Nexus, you usually have to run it on your own server, or there's a SaaS version from Artifactory, but it's still just a server that they provision for you.
Okay.
And so this is a multi-tenant service.
Yeah. So how do you? Because I think usually for these kind of things, security is the most critical thing, right? Because in the organization where I worked with, the whole reason of running a private repository is not to let the code, being seen by other people or whatever, because those are internal libraries that they want to use, and they don't want to expose it to the outside. And also the other reason is that they also have the federated repositories. If you use Nexus, for example,
Yep.
you also federate the public things as well.
Yeah.
So you're asking people to put their private code in there. So how can one of our listeners or me, can convince our boss that, hey, Daniel from New Zealand is running this, so he's a good guy, so I'm going to use this thing.
Yeah. So as you said, security is really really important, and so
Yeah.
that's kind of whenever I'm developing stuff, security is top of mind, and companies are more and more becoming more comfortable with putting their code somewhere on the internet, GitHub.
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
Yeah,
if-
GitHub private, yeah.
Yeah. So and there's certainly companies that just aren't comfortable with that risk. They just say as long as it's it's got to be in my firewall under my control, and that's fine. There's lots of great options for them there. So yeah, I'm gonna take security as seriously as I can, and audit the code as I'm writing it, and
Okay. And this is basically, I can use it exactly like every other Maven repository. So I can publish to it, I get keys, and then just use the same
that's right.
kind of tooling that I have.
Yeah,
okay.
exactly. Yeah. So there's no
Awesome.
there's no kind of plugins required. There's nothing weird that goes on there. It's just exactly the same as any other Maven repository.
And when do you expect this thing to get out of beta?
Early next year, I expect.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
One more quick question about that. One of the things that, because I used to be enterprise architect for a large corporation as well, and I introduced Nexus actually to that company, and I like the fact that you could, like he said, like Vijay said, you can proxy stuff and all those kind of things. But one of the things that people got annoyed about to some extent was that we could have things coming from the internet that weren't vetted. Is that something? Or there's two parts to that actually. One part, and it's something Nexus does, and something I think Artifactory does as well. Is one is they say, okay, well, if you depend on software like Foolib, whatever, and that Foolib has got a, I don't know, some sort of weird license or some kind of like viral license. iText is a good example actually, which is a PDF formatter for Java. And recently in version 3 or version 2, some version of it moved to GPL v3, which suddenly meant that if you included the library in your code, bam, everything had to be open source. So long story there, but the main point is that you could identify that in Nexus, let's say, and you can say, okay, we don't want to include that in our code anymore. Are those the kind of features that Deps is going to have? I mean, sadly, I haven't looked at it myself, and after this I will. But what kind of added value do you have over a simple hosting model, if any?
Yeah, so those are those kind of federated repositories and license checking, that sort of stuff is definitely something I want to add to Deps. I don't have anything there at the moment, but that's certainly certainly people need it, and certainly large enterprises, it's really important to them. What I still need to learn is how important that is to the small medium sized developer shops that I'm targeting.
Right, yeah.
But it's definitely on my radar.
Sweet. Okay, so the big thing that we want to talk about, the new project that you started. I don't know if we want to call it as a project, but
so hang on,
give us all the details.
We're an hour in now, and we've suddenly get to the point where I'm sorry, we went out of time. Okay, stop now.
we have so many things to talk about, Daniel. So it's kind of
yeah. Sorry about that. We've waffled on for a hell of a long time. So yeah, let's get to the meat of it now. Finally.
Yeah. So the new project organization that just came out last week is Clojurists Together, and so it's a organization that's designed to help fund and keep Clojure open source projects sustainable. And so the general model is that developers and companies commit to giving us some money each month, and then they tell us what things they think are important for the Clojure community. Then we have open source developers submit their projects to us and explain why they think it would be a good fit, and then we look at those the applications from people and what companies and developers are telling us, and say, all right, which are the what's going to give the most impact to the most people in the next 3 months. And so then we pay those developers to work on those projects for the next 3 months, and then we repeat the cycle again.
Awesome. So what is the structure? So how can somebody become a member? Because there are two sides to this thing, right? I mean, people who are getting benefit from contributing open source projects or putting their project in under the umbrella or I don't know, sponsorship of Clojures Together, and also the companies or the developer members getting into this one. So can you elaborate on that thing a bit?
Sure. Yeah. So on our website, clojuristttogether.org, there's different pages that, depending on who you are, where you're coming from. So for companies, they can sign up and look at the different support levels that are available to them, and hopefully pick the highest one and support us. There's also an option for individual developers. So if you're someone who you can't convince your company use Clojure, or maybe your company doesn't use Clojure, but you like it and you just want to support this community, then you can sign up for an individual developer membership, and then if you're an open source project maintainer, you can also apply. You can see what sort of we don't really place requirements on you, but there's just a little bit of structure around how the project runs, and you need to tell us what you've done each month and stuff. So it's not onerous, but there is a little bit of communication required as part of it.
Can I ask you a boring question? Like, I notice you've got different levels of your company memberships that you've got cute names for. So you have like a source member, cons member. Did you think about the branding here? Because cons member sounds bad, but okay. And you've got reduce member is the highest level. Is that that's very good. Yeah.
Let's reduce one more.
Yeah. Yeah. It's very good. Yeah, I like it.
Thanks.
Is there did any projects apply for funding already? I know it's a very early stage for the movement, so to speak.
Yeah, we've had maybe just about 10 projects apply, and I can't. I'm not going to sort of talk about them just yet, but there's definitely some really cool projects in there. Ones that are well used among the community, and so really the challenge we have is getting enough money to fund them all. And so I guess that's kind of where the listeners come in. Hopefully they can talk to their bosses about signing up for a company membership, because we've already had really good uptake from individual developers who are signing up. Haven't had so much interest from companies. We've had a couple of companies though that have, and really grateful to them. And it's I think we kind of need a mix of both for it to really work well. We need something community to support it and back it and be behind it, but also it's the companies that have the resources to really sponsor this to a high level.
So as I understand, if a company joins, they can have tax deductions as well. So it's not a kind of, because it's a charitable donation, it's treated as a charitable donation, you can get some tax benefits from it as well. So it's not kind of a completely, what should we say? It's not completely without some benefit to the companies also.
Yeah. So there's the direct financial benefit of tax deductibility. I think, as far as I'm aware, that only really works if your company has a US base of operations. But the other part of this is for companies to think about is what's the cost of your own developers working around bugs in projects and maintaining private forks of things, because the person who you're depending on this project, but they don't have the time or energy to maintain it, or accept your pull requests or whatever. So there's companies every day are already paying these costs in one way or the other, and so this is a way to benefit the community, but also benefit those companies.
So what's the education around that? Because I definitely see you see a lot of this stuff going around where, and I've been in large companies myself where people are very happy to spend ridiculous amounts of money with Microsoft and Oracle and these other guys for shit technology and for shit support. Let's just be honest about that, and why are they doing it? You always ask, why you spend this money? Well, two reasons. Number one is we can sue them. Yeah, that is a ridiculous argument, but it's out there. If it all goes wrong, we can sue them. By the way, you can't. If your business sinks and Oracle's got a bug, good luck suing them. Because that's not going to help you. But it seems to be like it's about the other reason, and the reason why a lot of these people are nervous about open source even is this indemnity problem. Where in theory, if they use this software in their software, then if that turns out to be foul of some patent or patent troll or some shit, then these guys, in theory, can be sued as well. So they've got some liability. Whereas with certain Linux Foundation projects or JBoss and stuff like that, where they got Red Hat people, they're indemnified against it. Is this something which you're also thinking about? Because a lot of these, why do people spend money? And it's very rarely for pure kind of reasons of goodness. It's often to stave off some horrible legal bullshit that they've got to deal with.
Yeah, so I think that there's definitely, as you said, there's large amounts of money going to commercial software, and I think one of the things that this is kind of part of Clojure Together and the project that we're based around or modeled off as Ruby Together is that there is a growing recognition in the open source community and companies that use open source projects that this is not necessarily sustainable for in the long term. That people work on these projects for a few years and then they just move on, or they get burnt out, or there's just too much other stuff going on, and these projects sometimes get left to just not rot, but they're just
they're left
not
to
moving
open
forward
SSL. Let's call it that.
Yeah, they're not moving forward anymore, and so people are there was, I think, more and more people are realizing that the software has value and that someone needs to be maintaining it. And so what Clojure Together is trying to do is create sort of a brand name and something that large companies can hang their hat on and say, all right, we use Clojure and this is what we support to make sure that our stack stays current. And that's not to say we don't want to suck up funding if projects are funding different open source projects directly. That's great, and definitely don't want that to stop at all. But there's that can be hard for people to sometimes even give money to projects. They don't have an easy way to give them money, or there's too much overhead for them, and it's this is just another option for these larger companies to support it.
Okay, but isn't this maybe that's what you're pointing out as well? Like, if there is a company that is dependent on a particular stack, and if I want to support as that company, if I want to support those projects, but they're not necessarily part of Clojure Together, then I'm kind of in a flux, right? Because should I support Clojure Together, but because you're selecting the projects for me, not actually me offering the money directly to the project. So how do you think this is going to play out?
Yeah, so people tell us, firstly, they tell us what's important to them. We get that signal pretty clearly. And certainly if people want to and are able to fund the projects together, they should definitely do that. But that's, there's lots of reasons why, that's always been a possibility, for the last 20 years. And I think we've seen for the most part that companies, don't sponsor the projects that they use. This is, this will help them and help the general health of the Clojure community, and their projects. And as we get larger and larger, we'll be able to sponsor more and more of the core kinds of projects that everybody benefits from and depends on.
Okay, so the idea is to give out like a hourly rate for the people who work on the OSS projects, right? Based on the funding.
Yep, that's right. Yep. So we'll say upfront, okay, we can sponsor you for 10 hours a month or 20 hours a month or whatever makes sense and that we can afford.
Terrific. Okay. Well, I think, as many people should first know that this exists, that is, I think, one of the biggest challenges, because most of the times, you hear things like, oh, okay, I never heard of this thing, I think getting the word out there is much more important. And of course, there is the challenge of balancing both sides. Like, you have enough projects looking for funding, as well as you have enough members, supporting the organization, so you can support the projects themselves. So I really hope more and more people will get into this thing, and this is a fantastic initiative, by the way. Congratulations on booting it up. I can see lots of known names, and hopefully we'll get them onto the show as well eventually. We are following up with some of those people.
That's right. Yeah, it's not
Trying to
just
schedule.
not just me. That's worked on this as well. So the other people on that, I'll just get their names to make sure they get their credit too. Toby Crawley, Bridget Hillier, Maria Geller, Devon Walters, Daniel Solano Gomez, and Larry Stadden Jr. So some familiar names.
Maria is in New Zealand, isn't she?
She was in New Zealand, but she's moved to Germany.
To Berlin.
To Berlin.
Right. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I'm not stalking her or anything. I just happened she mentioned it in one of her talks, just to put it out there.
That's probably about the Clojure script talk. We discussed it a couple of times on the podcast.
Yeah.
Well, we'll try to have her as a guest soon as well. Sure. And Toby Crawley used to work with JBoss, right, or at least the Immutant.
Yes, he worked at Red Hat, and
Okay, so this is again fantastic thing. We really hope that more and more people start supporting it first, so you have enough funding to enough members to fund the projects.
Yeah, it's a very laudable
awesome.
idea, that's for sure.
Yeah. Okay, as you know, we started our Patreon, so as soon as we get a ridiculous amount of money, we'll become member as well.
Yeah, we'll use let's say 10% of the surplus.
Yes. That's a creative way of saying that
You're getting
the last
nothing.
20 cents.
Okay.
Anyway. So any other things that you want to highlight, Daniel?
The other thing that people might be familiar with is the REPL, which is a weekly newsletter I write about Clojure. That's at therepl.net. And so I try and sort of pick through what's happening in Clojure every week and pick out what I think is interesting and what I think other people will find interesting too.
It's a fantastic thing. I mean, it's like it has that Clojure-ness to it. It's minimal. It has packed with enough information, right? Just for the week. Pretty awesome. And thanks for mentioning our podcast a long time ago. And I'm sorry I missed on the Christmas card thing. Is there a way I can get into that thing or no? Not.
Yeah. I'll get your details afterwards.
There should be some benefit for running a podcast,
Of course.
Yeah,
Thank you.
We'll have to do that.
Huh?
I said we'll have to do that. Make it 82. You got 80. We'll have to.
But it's really cool. I mean, it's I know you've been putting out very interesting links out there. So for the people who don't know, it's what is the link?
therepl.net.
therepl.net. So you can subscribe to it. It's a weekly newsletter that comes up with fantastic links and everything about Clojure script, including sometimes links to different podcasts. So it's a classy mailing list. I'm pretty sure it's classy.
The thing I like about it is you've got some very small subsets of information which are always kind of like, there's always something interesting, and you have this headline saying people are worried about types. And it's funny for a Clojure newsletter to have that, but yet there's always something in that section. There's always one or two pieces, So what's your thinking about that? I mean, you've put it there. So tell me a little bit about, why do you think people are worried about types in the Clojure world? I know some of the answers, but fuck it. Your turn. Okay.
Yeah. So the title.
The fires.
Yeah.
So that sort of subheading is sort of a reference to, there's a financial journalist, Matt Levine, who writes a daily column about sort of Wall Street and finance, and he's really, really funny, and he has a recurring section, people are worried about bond market liquidity, which is this very, very...
I missed that reference. Yes. I really missed that reference. Sorry about that,
That's all right.
I have no clue either.
I think 3 people on the list might have got it,
Yeah. So, people are worried about, it's sort of joking, that, people are not necessarily really worried about it all the time. But there is definitely, especially in the last couple of months, some fairly heated discussions about types and typing. And I think, there's value to both, is probably as diplomatic a way that I could put it. I wouldn't I think spec's really interesting, and it's going to have some bridges that gap to some degree. It's not it's not the same as types, but you get some of the benefits some of the time for them. I wouldn't begrudge anyone using using a typed language. That's for sure.
You're not going to go around their houses and like
no
abuse them, put poop in the doorway or something. It's not that kind of thing. Good. Actually, funny enough, we had this bit off topic to some extent, but we had a functional programming meetup for the first time near where I live last week, and we were talking about, in the Sky, one of my friends was making a presentation about Elm and some live coding, and everyone was very happy with it. It was very good. And what we sort of started talking afterwards, and of course, literally an hour about why should we use types? Why shouldn't we use types? When can Elm infer types? When can't it infer types? Why it mostly infers types by saying there are maps? So why bother? It's just because you've got like half of the room are Clojure people and half of the room are like Scala or Elm or Haskell people. Then it's kind of like it's just hatred is the common ground.
Yeah.
Funny enough, I opened. I was one of the organisers of this thing. I opened up by saying there's more that unites us than divides us, and I'm pretty sure that types is one of those things which does unite us in the end because it all has to bottom down, but we are worried about it. So it's a great headline, I think. Yeah.
I think eventually we'll get either Martin Odersky or I don't know, Simon Peyton Jones on Defen, and then things are going to be completely different. So it'll be fun. I think we will get there. So Daniel, I think that the most important question for today, so do you use Emacs or
I thought you'd forgotten this question.
Yeah,
there is no way.
It's got a screensaver. It's a black and white screen he's got, and it's burnt into it at the bottom.
There is a screen burn in with my mini buffer and mode line. So yeah.
So I'm a Cursive user. I've been using Cursive.
Is it just because peer pressure because it's from New Zealand and you're like you're secretly you're actually using Emacs, but in public you just want to support Colin a bit and then.
No, it's the opposite. I think there's a really there's a really
fucking hair to Emacs, VJ.
No. There's a really strong
using it. Yeah.
There's a really strong mythos story, sort of origin hacker, myth of the Emacs user. And I think that's a really powerful story that people tell themselves when they're learning Clojure and they're learning Lisps and that sort of thing. I'm going to follow the path of the parentheses, and part of that is Emacs. And of course that's what I did too. And so I was working for a company up in Auckland doing Clojure work, and everyone else was using Cursive because they were all sort of ex-Java users, so they were very comfortable with IntelliJ, and I was using Emacs, and I found they sort of said you should use it, it's really good, and I sort of held off, and then eventually I realized I was spending I don't know, some amount of time every day just keeping my REPL running, and wouldn't know from one day to the next can I jack in with Cider today? What's gonna break today? And I think things have gotten a lot better with Cider in the time since. But contrasting that with Cursive, I never worry about Cursive. It just is always there, never crashes. There's just kind of I spend no time thinking about it, and I've got work to do. I can't justify billing time fiddling with my Emacs set up to my clients. So
this is the moment that I usually say to our guests,
this is so good. Keep talking, Daniel. Keep talking.
The power of Stallman compels you.
Go on, VJ.
The power of Stallman compels you.
Yeah. Tell us about the superpowers, VJ.
Of course. Let's see. This is something that we discussed a lot. I mean, I don't want everybody to use Emacs. Then we basically lose the competitive edge. So and it's really cool that someone from Toronto even. I mean, I was just checking our Defen podcast emails.
Oh my god! Yeah.
I
got
apologize.
Tech support for Emacs on our email.
Okay,
box, yeah.
I really apologize, Perry Hallenby from Toronto. I mean, he sent a message yesterday at 4:00. Unfortunately, I didn't check my email, but he figured it out within 1 hour. So it's pretty awesome. He's using Emacs, so I'm very happy.
Are you running
So
email in your Emacs as well? Obviously,
Of course,
you are,
there
I
is a
guess.
Mu4e, and then we have Mu4e, and then I have an offline IMAP. I'm thinking about switching to Mbox at some point.
That's a no then, yeah.
Yeah, but anyway. No, I mean, I'm using it. I'm talking about the email fetching program. That's offline IMAP or Mbox. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Anyway, I tweet from Emacs occasionally.
That's awesome.
So I
Not
to say that I really respect Emacs. I like it. I think it's extremely powerful. But for me, I just don't have the time or energy to learn it and maintain it and keep up with it. And Cursive does all that for me. So
Very nice.
Very diplomatic.
Okay.
Yeah. I think we know where you are. It's okay.
I'm gonna take it as peer pressure from Colin. I mean, Colin is basically like going around New Zealand and telling people if you don't use cursive, you're not a Kiwi anymore or something like that.
Yeah, I think
And that's certainly possible. He's just riding on the patriotism card there. Anyway, nationalistic behavior. Okay, so I think we are almost at the end of our show. I think it's almost 1 hour. Yeah, about 1 hour. Is there anything like famous last words before we close the show?
No, I think that I've covered everything.
Yeah.
That's
the last thing,
people.
actually, let's just quickly do this, is the Kibit thing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because I think that would be, I mean, if we've got a little bit more time, if we can just do like 5
plenty of
minutes
time.
on Kibit, because I think that, to me, that's like especially someone, tell me a bit of a story about the Kibit, because if you're just starting with Kibit from scratch, I think that's pretty phenomenal, to be honest. Anyway,
Yeah, so Kibit is a project created by Jonas Enland, and it's been around for quite a few years now. And it's the goal of Kibit is to help you rewrite your code, your Clojure code, into more idiomatic Clojure code. So it looks at the patterns in the code that you write and says, oh, it looks like you're trying to do this thing, which is perhaps a little bit convoluted. Why don't you try this pattern, which is more idiomatic? And so it's a plugin and it's a library, so you can use it from Lineagen or from in the REPL, and someone's created a boot task for it. We don't have anything official for boot yet, but certainly if anyone wanted to contribute something, we'd be happy to take it. And so the goal of Kibit is to help people learn more and more. What's the idiomatic way of doing things in Clojure, and that's there's kind of part of Kibit that is not really fully fleshed out yet, but something we'd like to do is help people write their own rules and be able to choose which rules they like, because Kibit expresses its opinions on what things should be, and sometimes you might disagree, and I even disagree with some of the things that Kibit gives me.
Give us an example of what you disagree with. Come on, just to prove your point there.
The threading. I think threading is probably a pretty good example. So sometimes if you're threading, I think it's if you thread 2 things through using a threading macro, Kibit will say actually you could just put one function inside the other, and that's correct. But sometimes it makes more sense and is easier to read and easier to understand as a threading macro than one function inside of the other.
Point free.
Sometimes it's correct, or sometimes it reads better, but oftentimes I find it doesn't actually. That's not a useful suggestion. So that's something.
So you're going to do a plugin for Sonar to rate your code.
Yeah, I think I remember seeing some sort of Clojure Sonar thing a long time ago. I'm not sure.
I'm just joking about that. It's a bullshit.
No, I think it's good. It's a good idea though. I think it would be good. There is Code Climate which is a SaaS service, has Kibit support, and I think there's a couple of other places that also use Kibit, in online services.
Yeah.
So do you have like, because one of the things I think, what's the cider guy called again, actually?
Bozidar?
Yeah, I always,
Bozidar.
Bozidar. I always butcher his name, actually. So, yeah, thank you. Rescued me there. Bozidar is, he was complaining that a lot of the standard Clojure code isn't even idiomatic and it's all over the place. And, certainly in terms of macros. But what do you use as a sort of canonical example of idiomatic Clojure code to base your judgments on?
So we've used Bozidar's style guide, Clojure style guide,
okay.
that he maintains. So that's not all of those rules can be expressed in Kibit. Some of them are line length and different things. Probably the person whose code I admire the most and think is the most beautiful is James Reeves. I always I look at his code and I always just think, oh man, this is really clean and nice, and I follow quite a few of his repositories, and I always learn something when people make pull requests, and he says, you should structure it this way, and even his specs, his Clojure specs look really nice. Sometimes they can they're useful, but sometimes they can end up looking a little bit messy. But his specs, everything he does is really clean. So I'd say he's probably a big influence on that.
I like that. Yeah, friend of the show, of course. You've been on before.
Yeah, he's been on.
you love this guy. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So kudos to James. Yeah, I agree. He's got a very nice style. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right. Cool. Well, I think that's really good stuff. Thank you very much, Daniel. I think you're doing some great stuff there, and good actual code with the reframe stuff, and great community efforts with the Clojures and the Deps and the Clojurists together. So overall, top man from New Zealand. Thank you very much for your work.
Thanks.
Yes, thank you. So people who are listening, subscribe to REPL, get onto the beta for Deps, pay for Clojurists together, become a member. So this is something I think could be one of the probably biggest things that Clojure can benefit from. As a community, as sustaining all the open source projects that are out there. I think that is really, really important, because one of the biggest questions every time when you pull in some other library from random place, random place being the internet, your first question is, how maintainable is this shit? I mean, what happens if somebody just drops it off? So, and of course, we always have people who are extremely hardworking, like Daniel. I see, so many projects that he's maintaining, but we want to make sure that it is healthy and sustainable. So, and thanks for starting it, Daniel. And we really hope that it is going to pick up, and then some people will see the value in it and then fund the projects. So that'll be awesome.
I hope so too.
Yeah. And so to conclude, we just want to mention a quick thing. We announced that we are going to accept, not accept. We asked for.
We begged.
We begged.
We begged for money.
We begged for money to make sure that we feed our cats and dogs. I don't have any, but if I have them, I would probably feed them.
We can't afford any, can we, at the moment? Yeah.
Exactly. Right now we can't. But eventually, I think at this rate, we will afford a cat.
Half a cat, I think.
Within half a cat, yeah. Or a Schrodinger's cat within 20 years or so. But nevertheless, I mean, the people who jumped on to Patreon immediately and then started supporting us, I'd like to thank them.
Yeah.
This is fantastic, and thanks a lot for chipping in. It's not just about the money; it's about the support that you guys and folks are giving us. I'm going to read their names out. I'm not sure if obviously they're our patrons, so I don't want to insult them in any way. The rest of the world, as you can see, we keep insulting ourselves, so that's okay. It's Claudio Apetre and Emma Sagerbach, Sebastian Wagner, and we have Arturas Quesilis. So we have 4 patrons already, and actually we are thinking of some fancy stuff to perks to them. We will announce it once we decide what we're going to do for that one. So if you're listening to this podcast, obviously after you spend all your money on Clojure together and dEPs, if you have spare change left, you can go to Patreon and then support us as well. So that'll be awesome. Or at least, just show that, I don't know, your support. Then we would love to hear from you, what you want to hear, who you want to be on the show. Then we can use this as a hook for getting more and more people to get into Clojure.
Yeah.
So that's pretty much it, I think. Is there anything else, Ray?
I don't think so. Like I say, thank you again, Daniel. It was a pleasure. Probably just end up by saying thanks to Pizzeri, who does the music, and to Wouter, who does the sound engineering, both contributing fantastic efforts to the podcast as well. And thanks everyone for listening. It's a pleasure to keep on doing this, and we keep on getting good feedback. So yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you. And we'll probably publish a new episode soon in with a better rhythm.
What?
Yeah.
Cut this bit.
Cut this shit. I don't care. Yeah. Okay. That sounds reasonable.
Yeah.
Okay. Good night.
Good night. Goodbye.
Good morning.
Bye.
Thank
Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Godspeed.
Should we do a clap to finish as well?